So we have our pregnant woman here. We can show some connections. So often we're going to be doing the abdominal work more not necessarily always at the beginning, but a nice way to start can be to work through the sheet to start with. So you can place a hand on the abdomen, on the baby, and a hand on the head, and perhaps just connect with a little bit of breathing, saying hello to the baby, connecting with the breath. And then we could make a connection with the heart. So I'm in this position just kneeling behind. We can do this on a table or on the floor like I am. Often later on in pregnancy the floor is quite nice. And we just feel this connection, the heart beating, making a connection between the baby and the mother's heart. And perhaps feeling the movement of breath, tuning in. The pressure can be fairly definite. Obviously check in with the mother. And even we could just gently do a little bit of connecting down towards the abdomen. And then we can take our hand away. We could turn. Another connection actually while we're still through the sheet is placing a hand on the lower back in the lumbar area. And just again another way of connecting with the breath. A sandwiching technique is quite a nice way to introduce a little bit of perhaps a firmer connection. So my two hands are kind of coming together, getting some pressure. I start in the middle of the abdomen. And then I can just gently give some pressure. We'll come on to stroking in a minute, but it can be quite nice to have a little bit of pressure. So as she breathes out, we give a little bit of pressure between the two hands. We can come down the centre line a little bit. And the pressure's not going to be the same all around, so underneath we can slightly slide our hands under, as long as it's comfortable with the client. She can tell me if anything's not comfortable. Donc tu me dis s'il y a quelque chose qui va pas. And I give a little bit of deeper pressure on this side that's underneath. And then I can come around the top part. I don't want to give too strong pressure just at the top of the womb. And then I can come around. So now this top part I do need to be a bit more careful because the tissue is very stretched out here. So I give a little bit of pressure. Less pressure than before, but I find the hand on the back can be quite reassuring. And so you can do that for a little bit, include visualizations or whatever else you feel. If the mother is not so sure about you working with her, you could have done all of this through her hand. That could be quite a nice way too. So I place her hand on her abdomen, I get her to connect with her baby, and I could have done that for this one as well. So now with the arm, it really depends where it's comfortable for her when I'm working on the abdomen. So as I say, if she wants to keep her hand just here and we work through her hand, the hand is there. Maybe her arm is comfortable on the side of her body, or maybe her arm is more comfortable placed on a cushion. So we just have to see. And then we're going to take our sheet back and expose the abdomen. So we just tuck underneath and tuck around. And then we can get our oil. So I get some oil And for the oil, it can be quite nice to just have the two hands obviously warming the oil. You might need quite a lot of oil for an abdomen. And we would always go in a clockwise direction, but you can feel I can just gently reach underneath the front. The baby's moving there as I come around. Nice full hand connection. So you can see underneath I can get the hold a little bit more. And as I come around to the top, I'm a little bit more light in my pressure. So we can do the two hands coming around like this. Hand over hand to get a continuous movement, but the underneath hand, this side, is deeper, and the one on the top, so I'll just break that movement down. When I say the underneath hand, this one here, you have to, obviously don't force yourself under the abdomen here, just gently coming around and then coming over the top, and then this pressure is lighter. So you're coming around like this. But then we could do a little bit what we did at the beginning. So important, actually before we do that, important things for the abdomen are, we always want to come to the midline, so we can do this movement just coming to the navel and gathering up. So put our hands underneath without forcing, but coming as far underneath as we can, and just drawing to the midline by leaning back with our body, coming to the midline. We can do this a few times, sliding underneath and gathering in to the centre. And then it can be quite nice on the centre to just hold for a moment, pause and draw in and hold and connect with the baby. So we don't ever want to have any pressure coming away from the centre, because so coming on this side, because this will pull and stretch the recti muscles and the abdominal muscles. But you can do very light, so this then does become very light. It's a very light stroke coming away from the centre, just so that you can have some continuity. But this whole area here is quite stretched, so we need to be very careful. So this definitely needs to be a light stroke, especially because we're going away from the midline. So we can have a light stroke, because it can feel like it's giving a bit of space for the mum and her baby, well, for the baby, and we can come into the back. So again, also for the same reason, we don't want to do strong cross fibre work on QL, because that would put too much stretch. So hopefully you can see that this is all quite light work. But then when I come to the back, I could maybe hold one hand here, so I switch my position, and I can do this, the same pressure. Actually, I could start with the same pressure that I did through the sheet, starting in the middle so you can see where the navel is, working with the out breath as I give the pressure, always going in a clockwise way, but we started in the middle so we could come up to the top, working with a bit of pressure here. On this upper side, not so much pressure. So the angle of pressure needs to be towards this hand on the back. So this is why I often do the pressure with the hand on the back. So I'm not dragging on the skin, I'm not putting any strain on all the structures that are below. And then as I come more into the midline again, I can work a little bit deeper and come underneath. And then of course you could do your just some one-handed clockwise circling. So again, on the upper side it's not as deep, and on the lower side you can have more pressure. And so we can now do more of a gathering technique. So I'm changing my position, coming down at the back, and then from here I'm going to do the opposite stroke to what we did a moment ago, which is coming from the back and drawing over. But you see how I change my position. My hand is still fairly light because this whole area is the more vulnerable side. So I need to be fairly light as I come down here. And then as I gather to this hand, I may draw the two hands together and then pause and just draw in to the back with my pressure. So if I want to do that stroke again, I slide this hand very lightly, so this is combining the two strokes. From the centre, I can hold and sandwich the back, and then I can move my body, so I'm coming very gently on this top side and coming down to meet the hand in the centre. But you can see that at this stage of pregnancy it's very big, the abdomen, so you've got maybe have to repeat that a few times so that you're covering the whole of the abdomen. So here I'm doing it going up a little bit higher, coming back, so I can be a little bit firm on QL, and then as I come to the side I need to be much lighter, and as I come through I come to the front. And if I want to do the lower hand, I could move more to the lower side, still light, come into the back, a sandwiching movement, and then coming over. So this is fairly firm, but as soon as I get onto the side it's much lighter and I come to the centre. So I just want to show you a couple of movements that you can do on the side into the hip, because this area between the rib cage and the hip is the side of the abdomen, but it often gets quite congested, so it might actually even be better to open this a little bit before we do the strokes here. So we can just do a stretch, again not much pressure on the top bit here, but you can have one hand coming down onto the ilium, one hand coming onto the ribs, and you get a more of an opening in this area through a stretch. So you're stretching out between the ribs and the hips, creating space for this part of the abdomen which can often be a bit congested. And you hold, and then because all the tissue is much softer, then just take your time, and then so you're not letting it release too quickly or nor stretching too quickly, so you're opening up. And then you can gently release. And you can do it a little bit more from the back, or you could be a bit deeper. So then this is beginning to stretch more QL. But it still creates space for the baby, for breathing for the mother, for the ribs, releasing into the hips. So this is quite nice work for the abdomen. Another way that you could do the stretch, obviously don't want too much oil for this, is to just stroke it down the side, then hold the hip. Now you do need to make sure that you're under below, actually on the bone of the ilium, and not compressing this vulnerable area. You put your hands, if you've got a bit too much oil, you could come onto the sheet and just with your two hands directing your weight down to the feet, your feet just stretching out this whole area. That can help with breathing. Opening up a little bit in this way here too. Another alternative way of getting this stretch. So top of the abdomen, the ribs, obviously you can't get right under the ribs, but sometimes it can be nice to just gently give a little bit of a stretch on the back of the rib cage. That's with my right hand, and just getting a little bit of breathing to release. And you can do a little bit, the two together. This hand is slowly moving to the centre. This hand's more quickly moving to the centre. And then you come to rest. So, sometimes it can be nice to just open up the hip a little bit from here, leaning into the knee, and getting a slight release into the hip and this lower part of the abdomen, which again can be quite congested. So this is taking us more into rocking movements. Now let's see if the rocking movements are going to be suitable, because you can, instead of doing this one of these movements I showed you with the gathering from underneath, you can keep your hands still, so you just come underneath and then just lean back. Ça va comme ça? And I call this the rocking the baby, and that's why we have this pillow, which I'll show you in a minute. It's got a bolster and we rock the baby. Oh, the baby seems to like that. All of this, you see, I can feel the tissue softening and relaxing, and now I can start to feel the baby more, and we get a little bit of a rocking movement, and you just really have to feel into the rhythm that feels right for the woman that you're working with, and if indeed the rocking is a good movement. So my hands are on the lower side, not on the upper side. So I'm taking it's like I'm taking the weight of the baby, and then I'm just leaning back, and that's going to have an effect into the leg. And baby's moving quite a lot here now. And just have to see if it's appropriate or not. Just do it gently. It could just be more of a, you lean back and hold, and then you lean forward. Or you go into a rocking movement. And then you could make it a bigger rocking movement by taking the arm back. So the arm, in fact, could have been in this position, although obviously for some of the stroking from underneath that we were doing earlier, that's not so good. But if one hand's on the back, the arm could be here, could have been here, and we could have done the stroking here. But this position can also be quite nice for the connection with the heart and the breast and the chest. So we can make a connection in the centre of the breast, the heart, connection underneath, and then we just rock back the whole body like this. So we do rocking, rocking, and it's quite nice for pregnant women to feel this kind of rocking movement, but also for the baby it's quite a nice way to come into connection with the baby. And you can have your hand on the lower part of the abdomen, you could have your hand more on the middle part of the abdomen, and you just gently rock forwards and backwards. And then after this rocking, it's often quite good to do something more still. So you might sort of repeat some of the movements that we did at the beginning, but this time you can have your hand directly on the abdomen. And just connect with the baby, feeling what's going on for the baby. A lot of this work is really quite intuitive, just feeling into how the baby's responding, how much pressure you need to give the baby. Just responded then. Often the babies do start following your hands around and wiggling, and you follow, and they start playing with you. And the whole abdomen changes quite a lot. So of course that bit you can't really see from the video. I'm just showing you the main type of techniques that you can use. But then it's really feeling what feels right for the mother and of course the baby, and tuning into the baby and being aware that the different pressures depend on the position of the baby, but basically more pressure on the side that's away from you and much less pressure on this side here. And so then you could put your sheet completely back. It can often be quite a nice way to finish the session. Sometimes I hold the calming the heart points on the hand, And I might hold the head and just make a connection with the heart and the head this way. You can also come back to connecting with the baby after the rocking. You can link this with visualizations, with breath work, with organ connections. Now I'm coming into the lower back and the kidneys. And even you could have a whole hand along the front, connecting the heart this way. So, hopefully that gives you a few ideas of how to work with the abdomen in later pregnancy.